morning, everybody. Welcome to a red tea session. This is the first of 3 red teas we'll be covering. This one is called Chiffon, and this one is from Anhui province, Chiffon County. Chiffon County is in the southern part of Anhui province, and it is a very picturesque, beautiful, beautiful area. That area has been known for a long time. And excuse me, my goodness, a tea sneeze. That area, since before the Tang Dynasty, so Tang Dynasty 618 to around 960 or so, has been known for the production of great tea. Remembering, of course, back at that time, what style of tea was being picked and processed? It was green tea. So when did red / what Westerners call black tea really start in Chiffon County, and what led to that? Well, it really started in the 1800s, and it was really around 1875 that it really formally started, because a master producer was asked to see if they could experiment and create red tea, which they did, and they did it successfully. So we're going to talk, and by the end of this session, you'll know why red tea of Anhui, particularly Chiffon County, is different from red tea of almost anywhere else in China. And this is critical because we haven't talked very much about this in the past. You know, we've talked about, well, Yunnan has a lot of different red teas, and, you know, it's got ancient tree, it's got old tree, it's got bush, it's got everything. You see the red teas out of Fujian, which are Gongfu style creations. And what do I mean by that? Because remember, the term Gongfu is applied to a lot of things. So you hear people say Gongfu tea. Well, many times they're talking about small cup tea, but really Gongfu implies mastery. So we're talking about process. So mastery of process, fine detailed process. And so Fujian red teas are Gongfu red teas, fine detailed process. The Yunnan has some Gongfu, but it tends to be less of that and more of straightforward processing without a lot of extra, in quotes, frills. The frills is a bad word to use here. Really, a lot of extra craftsmanship. That's the better word to use in this context. So let's think a minute about Chiffon. Let's think about the world at that time, and let's think of the evolution from around 1875 to now. That's less than 200 years ago. That's about 150, 160 years ago that this tea was created. What was this creation in response to? It was in response to the fact the Opium War in China had already occurred. The British had, in effect, imposed their will on China, and in effect had basically said to the Chinese, hey, we're going to give you opium and you're going to give us tea. And that was kind of, nobody said it quite like that, by the way. I've simplified it so everybody's real clear about what really happened and what the war was really about. Because the war was really about the fact that the British saw their treasury falling rapidly because of the love in the empire. And I'm talking about the British colonial empire for tea. And so several campaigns were set up to reduce this dependence on China. One was to steal tea plants and tea technology. So Robert Fortune represented that section. But, you know, you steal the plants, you steal the technology. Does that mean you can come to Montclair and then start growing and producing Chima needle? The answer is no. It takes a long process, and you never quite replicate what's going on in China because the terroir is different. You can get approximations, but that's different. So then the next step was, okay, let's stop paying gold and silver for tea, and let's see if we can convince the Chinese that they would love something that we have from either another country or from Britain, and that we'll trade that thing instead. And really, after analyzing things, what they decided is, A, we can do opium. Let's trade that. So this war had already concluded. The British were thirstier than ever, consuming red tea like there was no tomorrow. The royal families across Europe were consuming red tea and setting the example for everybody. You know, if you wanted to be high class, you're going to consume red tea. So that's what we find in 1875. And so the reason and the impetus was, hey, wow, the demand for red tea is outstripping our ability. That is our, in this case, Chinese ability to satisfy out of Europe. Therefore, let's turn some of the green tea production into red tea. So the thinking was simple. The approach was complicated because just like anything, when you're going to change up a craft, you have to learn the details of what you're going to do to that craft. Even if you are a master craftsman and you haven't been doing this before, as you make adjustments, it's going to take some time, and the first efforts will probably be less than what later efforts are going to be. And this is no exception. So they fairly quickly, with an aid from Fujian province, actually get the process of doing red tea. What do I mean by an aid? The person who came and really wanted this to be started and established in Chiman County had worked in Fujian province. So he knew the process overall. And with his master processors, figured out a way to then produce Chiman. And actually, gosh, I jumped ahead of myself and I even called it wrong. This has been a week of plenty of understudy errors, and I just made one. So I said Chiman. Actually, the proper appellation for what occurred is Chihun. So that's a simplification, and it really implies a group of red teas from Chiman County. So Chi is simplification of Chiman, and Hun is red. And so what that tells you, and why this is important, is because it's not one single varietal. Just like all sorts of things in China, when Westerners look, they try and simplify. Oh, red tea from Chiman. Okay, let's call it Chiman needle. Queen loves that. King loves that. Everybody loves that. But that's not what happened. It's the group of teas called Chihun teas. So different varietals all done using one basic methodology. And that's why we have so many of them here. Chiffon is one. We used to carry and will again carry something very close to what's called Chima needle. We used to have vortex. That's part of that family. Luxuriant bangs is part of that family. Erudition is part of that family. We have several teas that all belong to Chiffon. So that's an important distinction to make. And when I'm talking about what they were doing in 1875, moving forward, was basically converting an area's worth of green tea into red teas. Now, this is very important to understand what I'm about to say, because it seems almost like I'm describing a government edict and the answer to do this. And the answer is no. That's not what I'm describing. So then why did so many farmers make that switch? Why did so many producers make that switch? They made the switch because good old capitalism. In other words, the market was huge in Europe, and the demand was huge, and the price was high, and these guys are smart. I want to make some money. Well, doing this green tea, I'm not making very much money, but doing this red tea during a hot red tea rising trend in Europe, I can make real money. So that's why so many farmers were convinced to make that conversion at that time. And in those early years, it was great. So what else came online in the late 1800s that started to change the picture? Well, the red tea from Sri Lanka was maturing. The red tea from Assam, India was maturing. So you were getting more supply in the market. So that was having an influence on price, right? Always does. Market's hot. You get a bunch of new suppliers in the market. The suppliers fill a whole range of quality. You have not bad, but lesser quality, and then you have the real premium quality. Chiffon basically belonged to the real premium quality. The teas coming out of Sri Lanka, the teas coming out of Assam belong more to a mass market. And so the result was that this put pressure, price pressure on the Chiffon, but not enough to stop the development. So it continued to develop. It developed all the way to 1915 when it won a world prize for quality and for significance at one of the world expositions. And this was hailed in China, hailed everywhere. And it became so popular after winning that world prize that the next boat, and by the way, they had a ship specifically named Chiman from China, docked in Britain, and that ship only had red tea on it. And for the next several years, that ship sold out before it even reached port. The supplies, the people who were managing that and approaching the European market were able to sell that ship out well before it hit port in London. So this tells you something about the popularity of red tea. People were crazy over it. They loved it that much. And they loved, in particular, the Chiffons. All right, so let's back up a minute. Chiffon Anhui, it comes from a Gungfu tradition that was fostered in Fujian province. So let's, in a rough way, talk about what makes it Kung Fu. What makes it special? What separates it from Assam? What separates it from Sri Lanka? So all of what I just mentioned go through the same 4 steps, right? Yeah, you pick, and maybe you pick buds in the leaf, buds in 2 leaves, buds in 3 leaves, but you pick. You pick in the spring, okay, we're all on the same page. You know, maybe someplace because of weather picks late February, another place picks late March. But you're picking and it's springtime. After you pick, you wither. It is you either lay it out outside or you lay it out inside and let the moisture reduce by 40 or 50%. Everybody's doing it, no exceptions. Because that's red tea process, right? Step number 4, right? You've withered this thing. What should we do next? Let's roll it. Let's break down the cell walls. That's so much fun, especially when you're doing it by hand. It smells so good. You smell those factories 2 or 3 miles before you get to the factories. Oh, it's fun. And after you do that, let's pile it. That's fun too. You just create these piles, and every processor was experimenting and deciding, well, my pile's a 10-inch pile. That makes a really good flavor. Hey, my pile's a 20-inch pile. Mine's a faster flavor. You're doing everything craft-wise. But is that what makes it Kung Fu? No, because everywhere is doing all of these things. And yes, you do have some differences, but not real big differences. At the end of the piling, oh, and by the way, what are you doing during piling? Are you doing this just so you can, jump on the TV? Why are you piling? You're piling because you're trying to encourage a certain level of oxidation. And what level of oxidation? And by the way, also removing moisture do you want to get to? Well, the remove moisture is you don't want more than about 15% left in the leaves. Excuse me. The real significant part of piling is the oxidation. The oxidation, a chemical process to change the flavor profile exuded or expressed by the tea leaves. Very simple. These 4 steps, oh, wait a minute. There is a 5th step. I almost forgot, because at 10 to 15% moisture, you're going to be happy for 30 days only. And you're not going to want to give a money back guarantee, because at the end of 30 days, you're going to start to have mold. That's a bad thing. So you got to reduce the moisture down to 4 or 5, 3%, something like that. And you usually bake it. That's it. All the places, Sri Lanka, Assam, Chiman, even Fujian, they all go through that process. Now, what separated Fujian and Chiman from the other places? They had 10 additional processes. So before we get into the specifics, because the specifics don't matter as much as the concept. So let's switch gears here for a minute. If we are thinking about cliff teas, I know this isn't the session on cliff teas, that's okay. There's a reason for this. 20 plus steps, you pick in the spring, it's not ready until the fall, and they don't usually put it on market until the next year. And so, you're going through all these darn steps to get this really finely crafted tea. And are you trying from year to year to replicate a flavor? And the answer would be no, because with the cliff teas, you can't control all the terroir elements. And if you tried to control with so many steps, you would go out of your mind. Too many variables. All right, let's return to the red teas now. I've gotten you all set up. So in the red teas, you just had 5 steps, not a bunch of variables, 5 very basic steps. Now, if you add 10 more steps in Anhui, just as you've added at least that many in Fujian, what are you trying to do? For the Chinese tea market, they differentiate by grade. And remember, let's not confuse grade, that term, with the term quality that we use here. Because in China, the grade doesn't necessarily equate so easily with quality. Although, if you're getting gift grade, that's assumed also to be highest quality. If you're getting Tuji, special grade, that's pretty darn high quality too. Price is much higher for those. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 3 or 4 grades are much more expensive. They don't just stop with 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 steps. They do a few more steps. So therefore, of course, you expect an added expense. Now let's go back to why they're doing all of these. They're trying in some way to standardize by the end of the process. And standardize, maybe I better use the other STA word, to stabilize flavor. Now remember, with the cliff teas, no way, impossible, because the areas of growth are small. You don't have tons of tea leaves. You're going through 25, 26 steps. Here you're going through 5 basic steps. And then you're adding these other steps. And it's really to stabilize, and maybe you can use a little bit standardized look and feel. They want all the leaves by grade to be looking about the same. They want the ratios of buds to leaf within a grade to be the same. They want the color scheme of the leaves to be about the same. So they're using all these steps to sort out things that don't make them the same. And at the highest levels, of course, what is it you're doing? You're generally speaking, really trying to just focus on buds. So you're going through all these steps, sieving, sorting, you reheat, you reshape. I mean, you're doing a ton of fine work. I mean, finely detailed. It also happens that it is fine work as well. But finely detailed is really what I'm referring to here. To get it to a certain end result that year by year, you're going to be able to roughly replicate. So let's make sure we understand what I just said, because this is really important and this is not well understood. With the cliff teas, does the farmer care 1 iota what the taste was last year? Well, only insofar as, yeah, they cared that it was great taste. But does great taste define the same way year by year? No. Their steps were to get it to great taste depending on what the input terroir gave them. For the red tea out of Chiffon, This is a whole different thought. It's like, oh no, are you kidding me? The Queen of England loves our stuff. The King of England loves our stuff. Let's make sure that year by year, it's within a relatively narrow range. Now, you're going to argue, and you should argue, well, how can it be precisely the same? This is a good and fair question. And the answer is it cannot. But within a narrow range, it can be roughly the same. And that's what they're aiming for. So the same look, the same approximate length of each leaf, the same very close taste profile of the leaves as a whole. That's what they're looking for. That's where the Kung Fu goes in the red tea process out of Chiffon County. And this is a really detailed process which takes a long time and is very costly. If you stop and you buy just the first 5 steps, very cheap, very uneven, very unpredictable, not great. But if you go to the gift class or grade, oh my gosh, this looks just like last year's gift. Wow. And it tastes really great, just like last year's. I recognize the taste. So it's a whole different starting point. And that's really, really important to understand. What else is important to understand? The other thing that's important to understand is even though I have extremely exclusive things I want to tell you, you're all thirsty. This is very important to understand. And I understand you're all thirsty. So let's satisfy that before I tell you these other important things about red tea. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to bring up the tea master, Sophie, Bijou.
Hi, good morning. 早上好 everyone. Yes, so we do 红茶, 祁门红茶. Okay, so okay, there's more.
So look at her tableau.
It's simple, easy.
3 cups, a strainer. Rock the rest of the strainer on. What must you have? You must have 2 cups in the strainer. You don't need the rock. You don't actually need this tray, although this tray is very convenient. And you don't need the 3rd or 4th cup unless you're in a big hurry to cool down the water. If in a normal situation, 2 cups in a strainer would work just fine. Tea Master is using anywhere from 175 to 200 degree water to heat up the cups. Make sure that there's no residue unwanted on those cups, soap or otherwise. And so this tea is going to be, she's going to draw the 175 degree water right now, and then she's going to dissipate the steam, in effect, aerate the water and cool it down. Use any technique to get around 170 degree water. If you are hotter than 175, that's a mistake. You're going to flatten the flavor. If you're cooler than 170, that's fine. The flavor's going to be brighter. All right. Dissipating the steam, aerating the water, and having fun. You are having fun, aren't you? Bijou?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. Slowly.
Slowly? Oh, this means you have to be present. Oh, my gosh.
Meditation.
Meditation, tea
Yeah.
meditation. Oh. Okay, so she knows that it's down to about where she wants it. Your package is labeled chiffon. It's not your turn to brew yet, but when it is, that's the package you'll use. She puts the leaves in the heated cup, and then she's going to shake the cup horizontally to get more surface area of the leaves covered. And then she's going to pour the water that she's going to use back into a pot, which has a nice spout so she can control where on the cup she pours. And she tries to pour on the side of the cup and not directly on the leaves themselves. All right.
3 minutes.
Two. Yes. And this has a 2-minute steeping time, which we are all very familiar with, except me, who can't remember. Take a look. You have tea leaves at the top. You have tea leaves at the bottom. All these teas are different. But the most important thing to notice is the uniformity. There's uniformity in terms of size. There's a certain evenness by batch in terms of colors. You wouldn't be able to tell by batch, but we're able to tell by batch color. So this is a Gongfu Chimen tea. Now I said that I'm going to talk to you about other reds. Are there other reds aside from Yunnan, Fujian, and Anhui? Does red tea exist anywhere else in China? It's an odd thing. The answer to this is an odd answer. There, in fact, are quite a few unique and such small batch farms that most people don't even know they really exist. I'll tell you a story of a meeting I had with an official in Hangzhou. And I asked the official about a red tea that I knew for a fact grew in Hangzhou, in the Dragonwell area. Or a tea that grew and was processed as a red tea. And he said, oh no, we don't have that. And all of a sudden I see his assistant, young chap, get out his Huawei phone and start to do something on the phone. And then 3 or 4 minutes later, whispers into the official's ear. And he says, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize we have 1 or 2 farms that do that. So turns out that red tea, by the way, timer's gone off. You'll notice that the tea master, not in a hurry, very focused, getting all the water out because you can get a nice 2nd and 3rd cup from this. And what a beautiful color. Look at this. This is what yours is going to end up looking like in a minute. We're going to enter the tea quality arena. You're going to ascertain several things. Stringency in the mouth, aftertaste, and what energetics you feel. You'll also, as you go through a 2nd and 3rd testing, think about aroma and think about taste. So let's go ahead. Let's not go ahead. I'll go ahead and taste it. Okay, I'm getting astringency in a certain part of my tongue. Oh my goodness, I'm already getting an aftertaste. That was fast. No energetics yet. Oh, just as I said that, I'm already getting energetics. Wow. Let me take a second one here. And remembering this is at 170, you can take a bigger sip, you can cover more of your mouth. You can get into the tea, into the dynamics of the tea much faster than, say, a cliff tea or a fully fermented tea. Okay, I'm ascertaining some of the flavor that I'm getting out of this, certainly the aroma. All right, it's your turn to brew. Bijou will brew with you. And you're drawing your water to first heat up the cups. Make sure your timer is set for 2 minutes. And you're drawing your 175-degree water. Ours is pre-programmed at that, and we're gonna, Tea Master is gonna aerate, dissipate steam. And remembering just a nice rhythm here. Again, not in a hurry, not slow, but just in rhythm. This is always really a cool part because watching the steam dissipate, getting a sense of as this is occurring, you get used to what the feel should be. And actually, subtly, you see Bijou always touch the glass because she knows from touch now about what the right brewing temperature of the glass is. You will too. Takes the leaves and puts them in the heated glass. And shakes horizontally. Ooh, it smells. I think the tea master was happy. I saw a short smile here on her face when she smelled that. Puts it in a pot, a kettle, I'm sorry, so that she can control the pour. And we have the timer at 2 minutes. We've set that. Okay, so the real point I'm trying to make here is red tea is grown in small areas all around China. And I said that wrong. And you all are about to text in with, that's a mistake, isn't it? And the answer is yes, that is a mistake. Tea is grown all in a variety of places in China, small places, and then processed as red tea. That's what I meant to say. And in some of these places, it's such small batches, only very local people have a chance to really be familiar with that tea. So that's important to understand because as farmers move around, sometimes they take the processing modality that they're most familiar with and apply it to wherever they end up going. And so that's why you get some interesting combinations. All right. So that tells you, so really what I'm trying to tell you is if you see on the market, oh, I've got this tea, red tea from Jiangsu, from this one little village area, that's possible. That's very possible because we've encountered that type of activity. And it's really, we can't go to every farm. So we hear about these things, and then sometimes we're introduced to these things, and then we're able to actually get this tea. But it's not always easy to do that. And though we're aware of lots and lots of farms, we just don't have that type of time for coverage. All right, your timer's gone off. This was a 2-minute steeping. You separate the tea leaves from the tea liquid. You save the tea leaves because you know you can get a couple more steeps out of this. Take a look at the color. This is what yours should look like. And let's go through the tasting methodology, the quality assessment methodology. So there's certain things you're going to recognize right away about this tea. And for those who've driven, for those who are not driven, but drunk Anhui teas before, this will be very familiar. It'll have those notes of clearly from Chiffon County. And this definitely does have those notes clearly from Chiffon County. A lot of interesting, good things going on with this. So go ahead and enter the quality arena. Start to make your assessments about astringency, overall mouthfeel, aftertaste, energetics, all the things that we normally go through. And we're not in a hurry to do this. We just want to get as much coverage as we can. And remember, there's also an energetics component to this as well. So you want to make sure you get that as well. As an aside, while you're thinking about this stuff, what sorts of things are red tea good for? Alleged health benefits. The alleged health benefits are lowered blood pressure, lowered blood sugar. In addition, very good for digestion, particularly if it's digestion issues related to tension. Lots of alleged benefits around digestion. Okay, and as you're further thinking, yeah, go ahead.
Participant shares the warm leaves had hints of chocolate and smoke under the maltiness, but the liquor smelled like caramelized plums.
Ah, liquor smells like caramelized plum. Love that comment. The warm leaves have slight hint of smoke to this particular, and chocolate, smoke and chocolate to this particular commentator. Everything is that you've reported is accessible, and you have accessed it. Good job. So when people in China are drinking red tea, they're usually either drinking local. So in Fujian province, a lot of people in Fujian, a smaller number of people in Canton province love the Fujian Gongfu teas. Most of the rest of China, let's leave Yunnan out of that, really are familiar to some degree with the, if they drink red tea, they're familiar to some degree with the Chiffon, the Chiman Reds, because those are the famous ones. Those are the big export teas from China. One of the Chiffon varietals is used as a base of all English breakfast. Yes.
Participant shares very smooth and juicy mouthfeel.
Smooth and juicy mouthfeel. Good. We're getting to the heart of this right away. That juicy, along with the caramelized plum, you put those two together, and all of a sudden, you have a recipe for something that you're going to drink relatively quickly. And from a producer's standpoint, you also have a recipe that you're going to aim for next year with next year's crop, or actually this year, because they're just picking the crop or starting to pick the crop right now. And they'll know from Chiffon that, hey, this is where I want aim. And they'll be able to get within a range that's fairly close. Yes.
The color is amber with hints of gold brought out by this morning sunlight.
Amber color with hints of gold, which are highlighted in the morning sunlight. Great description. I always love looking at the colors of these because so many of us, when we grew up, experienced the Lipton's red tea or red tea from other sources, and are not used to seeing such relatively light red tea. But it's light in color only because that flavor is strong and persistent. It's really good. Yes.
Participant shares, I get a dried stone fruit sweetness from the warm leaves that shifts to a little more tartness in the wet leaves. And then there's more honey-like sweetness in the liquor.
So we have a progression from the dry leaves, which have a stone fruit sweetness, to the wet leaves, which become tart, and then to honey-like tea liquor. And love this comment because what's going on here is you're taking the time and you're in the rhythm to evaluate each step of how this tea unfolds. And this is really important because when they have contests for which farmer or which area is doing the best of this tea, these are the types of comments that they're going to make. And it also tells you that for a tea like this, which they try at the highest levels to be more standardized, stabilized, it's really fine distinctions which set off the very best from pretty good. Yes.
The tea started off smooth and almost oily between my tongue and upper palate. And now after a few sips, I'm detecting the astringency, which makes me want to take another sip.
Great comment. Smooth and almost oily at the beginning. And then as you get further in the cup, this particular commentator notes, hey, there's astringency. And wow, this astringency attracts me to want to keep drinking. Great comment. And what I like is the conclusion of this comment. I especially like this because we heard juicy, we heard caramelized, we heard smooth, but this is the first time I think in all these sessions, somebody has linked the astringency to give me another drink. And that's a great, it's almost subconsciously programmed in our minds with this type of astringency. I gotta have another. So this gives you today a little bit different feel about Chiman or Chihung and the red teas in general. Now, I really wanted to leave you with a little bit different impression today because usually we talk about process in more detail, history in more detail. I really wanted to put everything in perspective, though, for you today, particularly what's the difference between Chiman and Yunnan. In Yunnan, you don't generally have the year-by-year precision in terms of a flavor profile. Fujian and some of the places, you get a bit of that. And actually, since this whole process came from Fujian, that's not a surprise. Most of the individualized red tea farms around China also don't quite hit the same notes in terms of consistency. And that is really what sets Chiman aside, because Chihung, I should say, aside, because year by year, they get the notes right because they've learned over time how to make sure that they get those notes right. And at the higher grade level, that counts. At the lower grade level, it doesn't count. And the lower grade would go into tea bags and not be the same prize tea that this is. Alrighty. Go ahead.
Another comment. Elegant, delicate, lovely chocolate notes. Deserves and perhaps demands my full attention and presence to achieve a lovely, relaxed state.
Love this comment. This tea, because of its elements. So let's go through those elements.
Elegant.
Elegant, that's right. An elegance to it.
Delicate.
And a delicateness to it. These demand attention. These demand presence. And this comment is great because it links that along with the flavor profiles, the chocolate that we've talked about, the stone fruit that we've talked about. It takes you on a journey. It's a different type of journey than a cliff tea journey, but it's a journey nonetheless. It's the red tea journey of elegance and delicateness, of a chance to really segment what you're tasting. Great comment.
Another comment. We might be in Anhui this morning, but I'm getting glimpses of Yunnan. 2 trips in 1.
Great comment. We're in Anhui for sure this morning, but this commentator is also getting glimpses of Yunnan. And the reason you're getting glimpses of Yunnan is because Yunnan actually does have some teas that belong into that Gunfu territory, the master craftsman territory. So the sweetness, the juiciness, as I think about some of the teas we have from Yunnan, I definitely see the connection. And remembering that the Yunnan tea industry was heavily influenced by Anhui, because it was one of the leaders from Anhui that came in 1938 when they were trying to leave an area that they were afraid was going to be overrun by the Japanese and get as far away and yet still within a tea producing region. They went to Yunnan and established a factory in Fengqing. So great comment. All right. So we covered everything that we intended to cover today. And again, I think today you're walking away with a different sort of impression about what red tea can be and what it represents, especially at the master craftsman arena, and what they're attempting to do, because each tea style has a different frame of reference. So that's what I was trying to give you today. Next week, we're going to do another red tea, and I believe it's efflorescence. Really looking forward to doing that with you. The third tea is going to be aromatic lily. Now, I've got to give you in this short time a little shop news as well. We are going to be going to both China and Japan this spring. I don't have an exact date yet, and I've been saying this now for 2 weeks. This is terrible. I'm working on it, and I think it'll be sometime at the end of March, but I'm really expecting to have a date before next week's session. So be on the lookout for that. And for those of you, there are number one tier, most dreaded words in the English language, understudy errors, obviously at the top. But the second most dreaded 2 words in the English language are T emergency. So let's make sure as you're thinking as we get up to our trip, if you're short of something that you think you might want, this period over the next 10 days to 2 weeks would be a good period to order it and pick it up so that you're not short during the time we're gone. We won't be back until sometime in May. Probably around May 10th is what we're guessing. We don't know precisely yet, but that's pretty close to what we're pretty sure we're going to be when we're going to be back. So, as usual, I am in awe of all of you because you, as usual, zoomed in, so to speak, on the key elements of this tea. You were able to pick them apart, express them clearly, and really, really showed me that you really do appreciate Chiffon. Your assignment this week, stay healthy. I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Take care.